Alrighty, so we're here. We're gonna talk some the Brooklyn Nets and Milwaukee Bucks. I was mix those two up. Game 7, Saturday. It's at 8:30. I forget 7. I think it's 7:30 our time, Central Standard Time. So probably 8:30 Eastern Time. Um, but yeah, obviously, since we've last been on, the series has shifted a bit with the Kyrie injury. And the Bucks have had moments where they, like Game 6 where they look good, and then they had moments in Game 5 where they just kind of blew it. So yeah, who do you have here for Saturday's Game 7 matchup here? Are you going? I believe you picked Brooklyn before, right?
No, I picked Milwaukee.
Okay,
We all
we
picked
all picked
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess are you sticking with your Milwaukee pick, or are you shifting to Brooklyn for Game 7?
I'm sticking with Milwaukee. I'm shaky on that because after what I saw with Kevin Durant game 5,
Yeah,
it feels like he could do it again. But I think if he starts doing that again, I have to, and maybe I'm putting too much trust in Mike Budenholzer, but I have to imagine they swap Giannis onto him. They start throwing double teams at him. They do anything they possibly can to not let him do what he did in game 5 and absolutely take over the game. Because yes, Jeff Green had a really solid performance, dominated from the 3-point line, but that was kind of it. Like nobody else really killed Milwaukee outside of those two. And like you'll live with Jeff Green having a game like that,
yeah,
Like I mean, obviously you don't want anybody to just go off on you for, I don't know, I think he had like 28 or something, 29. But if Jeff Green's going to be the guy to beat you, you'll be okay with that because you should win that game. But obviously, on top of Jeff Green going crazy, Kevin Durant went even more crazy and put up 49. So I'm sticking with Milwaukee. I think Kyrie being out, it's hurting Brooklyn as we've seen because they just, I mean, they're built around their three scorers. Nobody else can really create for themselves. A lot of these guys like Joe Harris, like they need catch and shoot opportunities or cut right after the catch, stuff like this. Like they're not gonna, ISO ball against Giannis or Drew Holiday or somebody like that. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Bucks. But man, it's just Kevin Durant is so good at basketball that it makes me nervous.
yeah. Well, so yeah, I hear you, but also I think because I think I'm gonna go with the Bucks too. I'm sticking with my pick too, but it is scary because it's to some of the Bucks. It seems like they've been going as Chris Middleton goes, not as Giannis goes. And Middleton's having a good shooting night, like he did the other night, and being aggressive in his mid range is hitting. I mean, along Giannis is going to get his 20, 30 points, but
Right.
I think what we saw in those losses was he got his 20 or 30, but it took him more shots and it took him more. It was just harder. It wasn't as efficient because also Chris
Right.
Middleton wasn't getting his as well. But I do agree with you. And in regards to picking the Bucks, it does scare me though. I mean, James Harden seemed. It's obvious he's not 100%, but he
Right.
seemed to be a little bit better last game. He played. He's been playing big minutes in the past 2 games, just coming off that type of injury. I mean, granted, they've needed him to, so it's understandable. But that does scare me as someone that's picking Milwaukee. Is maybe we finally get the James Harden game where he plays like the James Harden we know he can. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and then obviously when we made the post about it, we said it last time. The only thing that does scare me is Giannis. I mean, it seems like like we mentioned before, he just doesn't. He's either gonna drive in Euro step, or if you do stop him, he's gonna try to spin off you, or maybe he'll post you up and get you close enough where you can dunk it. But once again, the lack of moves is concerning, along with the consistency with his jump shot. So, but regardless, yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bucks just because. I mean, Drew's been solid too. They've had some solid production of everyone out of their team, and kind of like you alluded to. And I think we could have both agreed the supporting cast is just better for the Bucks, and I think that's once again that's because they don't have a theoretical third superstar like that Brooklyn does. So it'll definitely be a good game. But and like what you said, I'm not sure how much he was on Giannis. I don't think he was on KD that much, but I mean, Giannis said after Game 5 he wanted to guard KD. He said that, and I didn't see much of that here. So yeah, if especially if Katie starts going off like you mentioned, I'm curious to see if not even Mike Boonholzer, if Giannis, just you're the leader of the team. We've seen. I mean, we've seen legends. We've seen uh, guys like Kobe and other players. Like they've just like even number two. He said the change they made when he was on the Raptors against the Bucks. Nick Nurse walked in. There's that story. Said we're gonna make changes, and he said, "Yeah, I'm guarding Giannis." Giannis needs to approach that same mentality where it's like, "Sorry, coach, I don't care what you say. I'm gonna take him." And because yeah, like we mentioned last time, just one of the perfectly built to slow down a guy and guard a guy like Kevin Durant. Giannis is. So we'll see if if he'll take that challenge himself or Boonholder makes that change. But regardless, even just for spectators, just as a spectator, I would like to see that matchup a little more, especially in Game 7. So, um, yeah. And any other things you want to mention in regards to this game, or
I mean, just to further your point, like this guy was the defensive player of the year last
yeah,
year. Um, and I agree with you. Like, I mean, if you're gonna be the alpha dog on the team, and people are already questioning that, like I've heard people even say they should start building the offense around Chris Middleton. And not that they trade Giannis, right? Like Giannis is still on the team, but make the offense more friendly to a Chris Middleton led offense because in crunch time, he's the guy with the ball. And we even made the post, referring to that quote I had right before the first round. The Giannis, I think, and I still believe this, is the most unclutched superstar in the league because like he just if it comes down to it and it's Kevin Durant is killing us and we have to keep up, like he just took the 3-point lead and we got to answer. What is Giannis going to do? He's just going to run into the paint, maybe get it like, get a charge call or something like that. And that's going to be terrible. If they foul him, he's going to miss free throws because he's shooting a terrible percentage. And like he doesn't have a post game, like he's inconsistent on shooting. Like there's just so much stuff that at the end of the game, when it's close, I just don't have faith in him. And then on the defensive end, he's not even guarding Durant yet. So it's, with guys like Kawhi or, even like Rudy Gobert, right? Like we've seen in these playoffs, they've made game changing plays on the defensive end. Rudy Gobert with that block on Marcus Morris to tie the game. He doesn't let it happen. They win the game, right? Kawhi, we've seen him take the assignment to guard Luka Doncic. And in the second halves of games, Luka was struggling at the end of that series, and that led to the Clippers winning. So I just have to think maybe even if they don't start the game with Giannis on him, because I mean they have had some success throughout the series with PJ Tucker on him. If Kevin Durant is killing them again, Giannis, whether it's Budenholzer making the decision or somebody has to be the loud voice saying, Giannis, you have to stop him because you're the defensive player of the year.
yeah,
I mean, and you're not a center like Rudy Gobert. Obviously, they're not going to put Rudy Gobert and Kevin Durant, but Rudy Gobert is going to do as much as he can to stop guys from driving and all that kind of stuff. Giannis is a guy who can guard players in the perimeter, and he's not doing it. So I don't know. I mean, I even think back to like the play-in tournament, that Warriors versus Lakers game. Steph Curry trying to get the game tying or game winning shot off, and they put Anthony Davis on him with like two other dudes. Like obviously they triple teamed the heck out of him, but Anthony Davis, a guy who was in the Defensive Player of the Year, consideration for years, he was right there to make the play. It made it really hard for him to shoot over him. So yeah, I mean, if they allow Kevin Durant to do what he did in Game 5, it's shame on you, Milwaukee. Because that would be ridiculous. I know, which albeit if, like you said, if James Harden starts going off, it's going to be even more difficult because in Game 5 there was no excuse in that one. James Harden shot 1 for 10, right? But if James Harden's cooking, then it becomes more difficult. But even then, I believe in Drew Holiday, right? He's all defensive first team this year. So if James Harden's cooking, we're going to put Drew on him, and that's it. We're not going to throw doubles at him because we got to worry about KD, who is more healthy and all that kind of stuff. So I believe Milwaukee has the ability to win this game, but I'm still worried because I mean, I don't know if you watched Game 5, but Charles Barkley, he even said, I believe the Milwaukee Bucks are going to win the championship this year, but they might be the dumbest team in the league right now. And he just started referencing all these things they were doing and the defensive assignments and some of the offensive plays. Like, I don't know. It just feels like Milwaukee, like I said, they scare me because their defense is just questionable. And then late in games too, one thing that we haven't talked about, late in games, their offense just starts to get stagnant. It feels like they start they start playing the hero ball and less of the team ball that has got them the lead up into that point. Um, and I don't know if that's the pressure getting to them. I don't know if that's the opposing team tightening their defense. Um, but yeah, like I said, I think Milwaukee wins this, but I don't think it's comfortable for them by any means because the constant thing in the playoffs has always been who's the best player on the floor. That's going to win you the games. And I think that Brooklyn has two players who can easily be the best player on that floor in that game.
Yeah, and I just had a point in my head. Oh, and last point too for me is just I will say in regards to Milwaukee is ironically enough, I mentioned it was a concern. But, can the Nets clamp up and play defense? Except for that, you know, even that 86-83 game, the Bucks. I just want to note that every time the Bucks have won, they've held the Nets under 100 points. So
Right.
defense is going to be the key. But yeah, I agree with you. It'll be a fun game to watch for sure. And we'll see what happens. But another thing too that I just remembered what actually was now, was that I'm interested to see, like, once again, this is something that Mike Budenholzer has been criticized of, his just coaching and creativity. Maybe they take a page out of Golden State's book, because remember, teams were sagging off, have been sagging off Draymond Green, and this year they
Mm-hmm.
started doing more, basically just using Draymond as a screener, and Steph comes and gets a handoff and shoots off the screen because the help defenders sagging off, so it puts you a little bit of a bind. Something like that, maybe with Giannis, have Middleton come off a screen and do that, and maybe not doesn't have to be a three, but then step in. It just as you can imagine, it puts the defense maybe in more of a bind,
Right.
and then maybe they have to, they're not going to respect Giannis. The defender still has to step up, and maybe Giannis can just run right, roll, kind of like a pick and roll per se, run that, and then Giannis can, just something like you mentioned, something to help make things easier, and whether they save it for crunch time or just in general to jump out to a good start, because also some of their games they've jumped out to good starts, and then they lose the lead in the second quarter, so which we've seen a lot of blown leads this year. So
Yeah.
um, is there anything else you want to add, or we can, or
That I think that's going to be it for me. I will say that I mean, not as much for Kevin Durant, but I have to wonder for the Bucks' sake, if they lose this game, like where do they go? What move do they make next?
I think
Because
obviously I think a coaching change is next, because they already
right,
made some roster rearrangement. They traded for Drew Holiday. They almost got the Bogdanovich, but they didn't. But I think a coaching change is necessary, especially with some of the guys out there. Maybe a Terry Stotts might be better, because let's be honest, like we mentioned with Portland, they didn't really do. I'm not sure if that was him or front office doing the drafting, but drafting and some of those contract moves were not. We already talked. They made some bad decisions that bit them in
right.
the butt years later. I'm trying to think, but I know Sam.
Because I mean, outside of coaching, I mean, like they don't really have a lot of roster flexibility,
No, they
right?
don't.
Unless they traded like Middleton, but I don't know what you get for him.
Yeah,
Like I don't know what the market is to really make this roster better because I mean this feels like about the best roster they could get. All right, you have Giannis, you have a shooting big, and Brook Lopez is also pretty solid on the defensive end.
PJ
Drew
Tucker,
Holiday, Middleton. Obviously, it sucks that what's his name,
DiVincenzo.
DiVincenzo got hurt.
He's a good player.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like the only thing they really have left would be a coaching change if they lose this game, which I would agree with. But I don't know. I mean, outside of that, I think it just has to come from internal improvement, really, which has
Yeah,
to be a weird feeling for Bucks fans because really you're just hoping that your team can improve
and
without any help on the way.
yeah, I mean the only other thing that obviously this is Captain Obvious here. Yeah, that if they don't do a coaching change, then obviously Giannis needs to get some moves, get some dribble moves, get some post moves, improve his shot.
If
I
he
mean
could
that's
just
staying the
develop a
obvious.
post game, like he's trying to shoot, which I give him credit for, right? Because Ben Simmons is not shooting at all,
Yeah,
and
but
everybody's asked for him to do it for years, and
he's just
obviously
not even trying. Yeah,
everyone critiques Giannis for missing a lot, but I'll give the guy credit because he's trying, and I honestly think that like 5-6 years down the road, the things that he is trying today will have effect later in his career because I don't think that he'll always be a bad shooter. I think he'll get better and better. I'm not saying he's going to be elite at it, but I think he'll develop some, better shot stuff. Maybe he has to fix his mechanics a little bit though. But if he could develop a post game, he would be so dominant down there. There are very few players in the league that could probably even compete with him in the post. And then if they start doing that, then they got to put centers on him, and then he can draw them out because he's gonna sprint in like crazy. And I just I don't know how at this point in his career nobody's like sat there and tried to teach him how to work in the post, because it just feels so obvious that like
I mean,
that's with a team so spaced out as they are too. It's not like he has the Simmons excuse of having Embiid sitting in the paint, right? Like there's nobody down there. He could dominate any matchup that he gets, especially when guys like James Harden are guarding him.
maybe and this will be the last point. Maybe too, like maybe they just feel like especially during the regular season, because we talk about how well he does in the regular season. Maybe it's like, oh man, like he's not perfect with his technique and this post move or whatever, but he got away with it. Like the ball still went in, he still managed to dunk it, he still beat his defender, but that's because maybe in that instance he was the better just athlete, because most more
Right.
times than not. So maybe that's the case, but regardless, yeah, I'm interested to see. Yeah, I would think that if the Bucks do lose, they gotta change things up internally, because you've done all you can player wise, and I don't know the free agent class off the top of my head. I'm not sure the
This
cap
year's is
situation.
not good. It's
Okay,
it's next year's that is like loaded, but this year's it's like Kawhi and then like
if he
Andre
opts
Drummond
out,
is your
yeah,
next guy.
yeah. So alrighty, well, so that'll wrap that up. So we'll see what happens there, and yeah, hopefully we're not terribly wrong, but at least hopefully it's at least a good game. So we'll see what
I mean,
happens.
the podcast curse is gonna strike, and the Nets are gonna win now.
Yeah. So if it happens, it's your fault because you're the one that wanted to do this. So.
Okay, all right.